Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today in an old familiar location, and with another god video. We just finished the main 20 deities of the Inner Sea region, and now it is time to start looking to the more minor deities. But before that point, let's transition away by looking at the big man himself, Aroden, the dead god of humanity. Time to talk about the true villain of the Pathfinder setting. To start, let's begin by looking at where you can find information about the worship of Aroden without having to rely on me. First, Aroden has had scattered information about him since the first Faiths and Magic book from 1st edition. It was book 4 of Herald's Rebel's Adventure Path, the Song of Silver, which was the first place to give him and his faith a full look through. Which is the only place of a full write-up actually. There's no Inner Sea faiths, no Inner Sea gods. We also have a smattering of information elsewhere because he is a popular deity. But man, if I had a nickel for every adventure path which involved us fixing things which he did centuries ago. Either way, he still has a domain you can look at in Plain Adventures. And for more information and details, today we'll be looking at places like Ruins of the Azlanti Adventure Path, because you know why, and Arcane Anthology, and whatever else I can dig up on this guy. Long ago, Aroden was born in Azlant, destined from birth to be a legendary blacksmith and sword maker. One of the most famed blades he created in his life was the Azlanti Diamond, a jewel sword which was said to be destined to be owned by the next emperor, at a time when the throne was empty. However, none of the candidates impressed him, so he just kept the sword for himself. Not long after, Earthfall happened and the Azlanti Empire fell, but Aroden survived, and he led the remaining Azlanti into the New World. This included the Knights of the Iron Star, those who believed in the Starfall Protocol and the prophecy of the last Azlanti, and how he would bring about a new Golden Age. For centuries, Aroden traveled the world, finding ways to extend his life, killing demons in the abyss, messing around with important cultural artifacts in places like Arcadia, painting the roses in Cheliax white, until the day he rose the Starstone and became a full deity. Speaking of rising the Starstone and causing issues, this is the perfect time for our first side tangent, the part of the show where Aroden is the real villain. But also we talk about slightly unrelated issues besides just Aroden, but Aroden can be the villain most of the time anyway. Today's first, we have the Zolgoths, also known to surface dwellers as troglodytes. These were once the most advanced civilization in the Darklands, protected by objects known as the Cavern Hearts. However, one day Aroden came down and decided humans could use them better, and stole 5 of the 6 Aeon Orbs to allow greenery to grow on Absalom. However, the remaining one was not able to maintain the underground ecosystem, and the radiation of the caves slowly not only turned the lush forests into black deserts, but caused the creatures to fall apart more and more, until they were reduced to dumber, foul-smelling creatures. However, they still had enough of a mind to remember what Aroden had done to them, and they had been enemies of the surface dwellers ever since. But meanwhile, on Absalom, Aroden's faith grew, especially after he declared himself patron of all humanity. At first, he actively worked to protect humanity, including the then human Torbathon. But around the 4th century AR began to grow more and more distant from the world. He met his old friend Erasne, made her his herald, had her killed by the now lich Talbothan. Good times. However, as distant as he became, the world clung to prophecy of his return in 4606 AR, a good 4 millennia after he began pulling out. Talk about Stockholm Syndrome, am I right? However, on the day, Aroden did not arrive, and neither did the Age of Glory. All that came was a deafening sound, 3 weeks of storms, and prophecies which have sided with Aroden his whole life, suddenly stopped working. Aroden was dead. When he was alive, Aroden appeared as he did as a mortal, as a bearded Azlanti man. Instead of that, he preferred to appear before people in disguise. There are 12 guises he was known for: an artist, a beggar, a craftsman, a farmer, a fisher, a hunter, a merchant, a scholar, a shepherd, a soldier, a tailor, and a thief. There's imageries of these 12 forms used across cities with strong connections to Aroden. At its height, faith for Aroden was the strongest faith in the Inner region. Nearly every major location in the region has some form of physical mark of worship for the last Azlanti. They used the theses written by the deity to dictate city management and institutions like marriage. One of the most famed part of Aroden's worship was his many saints, due to the thousands of years of worship. But now, most of their spirits are scattered and gone from the great beyond, only Iomade and Milani remaining. Of course, since Aroden's death, many of the once faithful has left the faith to either worship deities who would actually answer their prayers, and those that remain died in the Mendevian Crusades. Of course, covering Aroden, we need to talk about another deity who was close to him. As side tangent 2. Once upon a time in his travels, Aroden went to Arcadia. There he met Erasne as a human. The two hit it off and became close, with note that, of course, Aroden used this opportunity to infect a local tree important to maintain the environment, in order to try to obtain immortality. Centuries later, the then god Aroden found Erasne again as an astral deva. Through talks, she agreed to be his herald, and things were good. That is until he sent her to fight against Talbothan in the Shining Crusades. In the end, she ended up with her body broken and cast before the knights who worshipped her. All unfortunate for her, but this would not be the last of her suffering. But that is a story for another day. As for the clergy of Aroden's faith, they are of course even in a rougher spot. What is the point of maintaining the faith of a god which is dead? Well, one of the things that the faith did is help galvanize communities together. And even today, they help speak for the weakest among the people. In addition, just as Aroden worked to place himself at the center of heroic prophecies, the priests encourage, even today, for a person to work to make their own way in life, become someone great not just by simple destiny, but by using one's own acts to help destiny come true. That said, for many, the worship of Aroden is now lip service, used as an excuse to grab a piece of the church's wealth. After all, even with Aroden gone, the many pieces of land and the ceremonial positions across countless countries remain. Faking it to make it is an easy way to get ahead. One of the few things left of Aroden's faith are his temples. They are built in the ancient Azlantian style, marble columns, domed roof, stained glass windows, statues of Aroden everywhere. Most of them are dedicated to a saint, usually one who had a miracle close by. In more rural areas, the temples also house the shrines of faiths aligned with Aroden, likely being Abadar, Desna, Eristil, Serenray, Shaelin, and Caden Kaelin. That said, while many of these churches remain, they now mostly serve as museums and embassies, or dungeons, depending on how well trapped the church is. Aroden's domain was once a bright district in Axis, but now without a ruler, it has fallen into ruins. That said, many still try to claim it to this day. Both armies of angels and devils trying to find a loophole in. It has become so bad that the rulers of Axis have decided that it is not part of the city, imprisoning it in a golden bubble until a new ruler has been decided, no matter how many centuries that would take. Now on to other information about Aroden's faith. First, the places he was most popular were, of course, Absalom, the nations of Taldor and Cheliax, and the nations that broke away from them before Aroden's death, them being Morthune, Nemothis, Lastwall, and the city-states of Vassarion. Aroden had many holidays devoted to him. Founding Day to celebrate Absalom and its founding, Remembrance Moon to honor those slain by the Whispering Tyrant, and Almase to train the populace to battle. All three still practiced to this day. Aroden's holy text is The History and Future of Humanity, a book written by Aroden giving basic advice, basic knowledge of medicine and engineering, and ways for humanity to achieve greatness. The cover is forged of bronze and also contains blank pages for the owner to record their own story in. Which, as you might expect, brings us to another book, at Side Tangent 3. But wait, this is not from Divine Anthology, but Arcane. The book is The Analytics of Aroden. These are a series of books collecting various bits of information connected to Aroden. There are spells that he is said to have created, which is why it was in the anthology in the first place, but also talks of weaponsmithing, animal husbandry, swordplay, and more minorly, politics, art, trade, and warfare. These are not single codified texts, but information cobbled together about Aroden, allowing for some lucky few to maybe find a unique spell lost to time, or learn more on the traditions of the deities Aroden himself worshipped. For his allies, first we have his divine servitors, which the only ones we know being his former heralds, Erasni and Iomade, who was his final herald. Yeah, messed it up twice, I don't know how. I do not need to talk on either of them, as they have / will have their own videos in the future. As for allies, as a man of Azlantian descent, he looked up to the gods of his people. In mortalhood, he held faith in Arkava and Amazned. Not a name I get to say often. But he also is respectful to Abadar, Shaelin, Pharasma, and Desna. As for the Ascended, he was of course close to Iomade, and allies of Caden Kaelin, while he and his faith was strongly against Norgabur. Also, he was against the faiths of Loremaster and Oguthora, and how they lead men astray and civilization to collapse. And to finish our journey, Side Tangent 4, let's take the time to scratch another Azlanti deity off our list. Mir, the Guide of Perfection. Deity of charity, lineage, and physical perfection. Appearing as an Azlanti woman, dressed in purple, she represents both looking back to thank one's ancestors and looking forward to improve oneself. She encouraged her followers to seek honorable deeds to accomplish to help those in need through the use of charity, and to grow strong. Her worshippers asked for health for their children to continue their lineage, and many flocked to her to trace their bloodlines back to nobility. However, close to the end days of the empire, most only worshipped her to improve their bodies to excel in sports. Part of her purview, sure, but the fact many of her positive traits were not seen as important enough for her followers to take time to do shows the reasons the Azlanti fell. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Interesting having to work on a dead god whose faith has faded away. It's mostly still the same, but everything is just more barren, hollow. Especially when this guy was once the top god. The one who we have to mention every few videos. But either way, I'll be back home by the time this video is up. So look forward to our continued look back to the elemental planes starting next week. I'll see you then.